6 of the most controversial speeches by world leaders. Former Soviet leader Khrushchev slams his shoe on the table to protest the remarks of a Philippine representative at a 1960 meeting. In one of the most memorable moments of the Cold War, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev took off his shoe and slammed it on the table in protest at a speech by a delegate to the 1960 United Nations General Assembly during a debate on a Russian resolution on complete decolonization. A Philippine government delegate accused the Soviet Union of double standards, citing its domination of Eastern Europe. In response, Khrushchev took off one of his shoes and angrily began to bang it on the Soviet delegation's table. The General Assembly's president, Frederick Boland, was forced to intervene and ask the audience to maintain calm. Khrushchev, referring to his remarks in Yugoslavia on August 24, 1963, said, "I once said that we will bury you and got into trouble. Of course, we will not bury you with a shovel. The working class itself will bury you." Cuban revolutionary Fidel Castro's speech at the 1960 General Assembly lasted about 4.5 hours. In his speech, Castro spoke about the true meaning of the Cuban Revolution, the nature of the reforms announced by his government, and warned the United States against attacking the country. He also outlined the issues that had led to the deterioration of relations between the United States and Cuba. Castro also took the opportunity to attack John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon, the presidential candidates. If Kennedy had not been an illiterate and arrogant millionaire, he said, he would have understood that a revolution with the support of the landowners against the farmers could not be carried out. It soon became clear that Castro was not a supporter of the other candidate either. As far as we know, neither of them has a political brain. Kennedy won the election and Nixon became president. 8 years later, Castro became president in 1976 and held the post until he resigned in 2008. Arafat at the 1974 meeting, "I came here with the weapon of a freedom fighter and an olive branch. Don't let the olive branch fall from my hands." On November 13, 1974, Yasser Arafat appeared for the first time at the request of the non-aligned movement at the UN General Assembly. In his speech, he called Zionism a form of racism. A year later, the General Assembly issued a resolution on the elimination of all forms of racial discrimination. This document listed Zionism as a form of racism and racial discrimination. In another part of his speech, Arafat said, "The difference between a revolutionary and a terrorist comes from the goal they fight for. Anyone who stands by a just movement and fights for freedom from invaders and colonialists cannot be called a terrorist. Those who wage war against other countries, colonize and oppress other peoples are terrorists." The Palestinian people were forced into armed struggle when they lost faith in the international community, which ignored their rights, and when it became clear that not even an inch of Palestinian territory could be returned through exclusively political means. Reagan, "Maybe we need a foreign, global threat to remind us of our common bonds." At the 42nd session of the United Nations General Assembly on September 21, 1987, U.S. President Ronald Reagan declared that the alien threat was an important factor that would help resolve conflicts between countries. He first raised the idea during a meeting with Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev in Geneva in 1985. Reagan later stated that alien-related themes were among his favorite science fiction stories. The media reported that Colin Powell, the president's national security advisor at the time, had tried to cut the passage from the speech. Reagan said at the United Nations, "While we are preoccupied with present hostilities, we often Forget what unites all members of humanity. Perhaps we need an external, global threat to remind us of our common bonds. Sometimes I wonder how quickly we would put aside our differences around the world if we were faced with an alien threat from outside this world. Gaddafi, move the UN to Libya, Palestine, and Israel will unite and form the state of Syria. On September 23, 2009, former Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi warned of political feudalism and called for permanent veto power for all members of the UN Security Council. He also declared that Libya did not consider itself bound by UN Charter resolutions. Leaders usually speak for about 15 minutes, but Gaddafi's speech lasted nearly 2 hours. He has also called for the prosecution of perpetrators of mass murder in Iraq, defended the Taliban's right to establish an Islamic emirate, stated that swine flu may have been created in a laboratory as a weapon, and called for full investigations into the assassinations of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King. Gaddafi suggested that the UN headquarters be moved to Libya because leaders would have to spend a long time on planes to get to the United States, and because Al-Qaeda might target New York again. He again suggested that Israel and Palestine form a new state called the Israel. In another part of his speech, Gaddafi waved a copy of the UN Charter and appeared to tear it up. He said he did not recognize the contents of the document.